My hands were shaking, not the gentle tremor of a long day, but the deep, bone-rattling fatigue that comes from pulling a double shift on 3 hours of sleep. It was late, well past midnight, and the main dining room of Ristorante Aurelio was still glittering with the kind of money that never worries about the time. I was Lena Caruso. I was 27 years old, and I was balancing a heavy silver tray loaded with veal piccata for table 4. The marble floor, polished to a mirror sheen every single evening, was my enemy. My worn-out server shoe, the one with the sole peeling just a little at the toe, caught the edge of a grout line. It was impossibly fast, a slip, a desperate wobble, and the laws of physics betrayed me. The tray tilted, I watched, as if in slow motion, as 3 pristine plates of expensive veal slid off and shattered on the floor. Hot lemony piccata sauce splashed in a perfect tragic arc, painting the immaculate floor and the hem of a nearby diner's silk skirt. The entire restaurant, which had just fallen into a cathedral-like hush, heard the crash. I was on my knees instantly, hot shame crawling up my neck, and under my breath, almost silent. I muttered the one phrase my Sicilian grandmother used for moments of absolute disaster. A prayer and a curse in one. Managgia la miseria. Damn the misery. And that was when I realized why the room had gone so quiet just before I fell. A man was standing in the archway, flanked by 2 others who were built like refrigerators in bespoke suits. He was tall, dressed in a suit so dark and perfectly tailored it seemed to drink the light. He was not looking at the mess. He was looking at me, Matteo Romano. Even I, a person who lived on tips and cheap coffee, knew that name, the Romano family. Their name was whispered in relation to the docks, the unions, the most exclusive clubs in Chicago. And here he was, the new boss, the one who had supposedly been educated back east, the one who was meant to be different but was rumored to be twice as ruthless as his father. My manager, Signore Valli, was at my side in a second. His face was a mask of white terror and red fury. "Imbecile," he hissed, his voice trembling as he glanced nervously at the entryway. "Clumsy, stupid girl. This is coming from your wages, all of it. Now clean this filth." The table that had been splashed was complaining loudly. A few other tables were snickering, enjoying the floor show. I just focused on the sharp, dangerous shards of porcelain, picking them up with shaking fingers. I felt a stinging in my eyes, and I was not sure if it was humiliation or just pure, unfiltered rage at my own life. How had I ended up here, kneeling in expensive garbage for people who laughed at me? A shadow fell over me. I froze. One of the refrigerators in suits had moved, but it was the man in the center, Matteo Romano, who had approached. He crouched down. Not all the way, but he leaned in, lowering his head until his face was just inches from my ear. The entire room held its breath. His voice was not a boom. It was a quiet, smooth baritone, like dark whiskey over ice. But it cut through the silence and made every other sound in the room cease to exist. "Say that again," he murmured. His breath was warm, smelling faintly of expensive tobacco and mint. Slowly, my blood turned to ice. He had heard me. He had heard me curse in the old dialect. My brain screamed at me to apologize, to beg, to grovel. But my Nona's stubbornness, the same spirit that gave me the curse, took over my tongue. My face was burning red, but I looked up just enough to meet his eyes. They were dark, almost black, and intensely focused. I whispered, my voice hoarse. "It is a terrible waste of good veal, sir." I tried to make it sound respectful. It came out sounding sarcastic, brittle. A beat of pure, terrifying silence passed. I could feel Valli vibrate with horror next to me. And then, the impossible happened. The corner of Matteo Romano's mouth twitched. It was not a smile. Not really. It was something more dangerous. It was genuine interest. His eyes changed. The flat, bored assessment he had worn upon entering was gone, replaced by a sharp, sudden curiosity. He was looking at me now as if I was not part of the flooring. He stood up to his full height, smoothing a cufflink. He looked at my manager. "She will be serving my table." He said, "It was not a request." Valley looked like he might faint. "But Signore Romano, she has just made this." "I know what she has just made," Matteo said, his voice still quiet, but the steel underneath was unmistakable. "We are short-staffed, are we not? She will serve us." He turned and walked to the best table in the house, the one in the velvet-roped alcove, his men settling around him. My coworker, Maria, who was clearing a nearby table, shot me a look of pure, unadulterated panic, mouthing "shut up" so hard her face contorted. Valley grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in. "You will not spill one drop. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will fix this, Lena, or you are finished." I spent the next hour in a personal, customized hell. My brain kept repeating a mantra. Just take the order, bring the food, get out. I took their drink orders. My voice was a thin, reedy thing I barely recognized. Matteo Romano ordered a bottle of Amarone that cost more than my month's rent. He ordered it in perfect, fluent Italian. Every time I approached the table, to pour the wine, to deliver the bread, to serve their main courses, his conversation would stop. His men would keep talking, but he would go silent. He would just watch me. It was not a sexual gaze. It was not the way other men in the restaurant looked at me. The casual, dismissive sizing up. This was different. He watched my hands as I poured the wine. He watched my face as I recited the specials. He was, as I had thought, reading me. He was looking for something, and the intensity of that stare made my skin feel 2 sizes too small. I cleared their plates. I offered dessert. He declined. He simply asked for the bill. I brought the leather folio. He did not even open it. He dropped a stack of cash onto it and pushed it toward me. "Keep it," he said. I glanced down. It was an obscene amount of money. Hundreds. Enough to cover the broken plates 12 times over. It was so much it felt like an insult. A price tag for my humiliation. "I cannot accept this, sir." "I am not asking you to accept it," he said, his eyes locking on mine. "I am telling you to take it. For the veal." His men were rising, scraping their chairs back. He stood as well. I was trapped, holding the folio, feeling the weight of his gaze. I was about to step back, to finally escape, when he said, "Wait." He reached out. I flinched, expecting him to grab my arm. He did not. His touch was surprisingly light. He gently took my wrist, turning it over. His fingers were warm against my skin, which was cold with sweat. I had not even noticed it was gone. He was holding my necklace. It was a simple silver chain, thin and worn, holding a single antique silver key, my mother's. She had given it to me before she died, a symbol for opening doors and keeping promises. The clasp must have broken when I fell. He had found it on the floor. He held it up, the small key dangling between his thumb and forefinger. "This fell," he said. Before I could react, he moved behind me. I stood frozen, acutely aware of his body heat, the scent of his cologne. His fingers brushed the bare skin on the back of my neck as he refastened the chain. His touch was careful, precise. He hooked the broken clasp back together with a practiced ease that was somehow unsettling. The small silver key settled back into its familiar place just below my collarbone. He leaned in again, his voice dropping back to that intimate, chilling murmur from the floor. "You should hold on tightly to precious things," he said, his lips brushing my ear. "In this city, anything left forgotten will disappear." He did not sound kind. He sounded like a man stating a fundamental law of his universe, and then he was gone. He and his men moved through the restaurant like a dark tide, and the moment the door closed behind them, the noise level in the room doubled, as if everyone had been holding their breath. I finished my shift, my mind a blank. Buzzing hive, Valley did not fire me. He did not even speak to me, which was somehow worse. I just scrubbed the kitchen until my hands were raw and changed out of my uniform in the cramped locker room. It was almost 2 a.m. when I finally walked out the back alley. The air was cold, the Chicago wind biting. My bus stop was 2 blocks away. Under a flickering streetlight, it was empty. Of course it was. The street was deserted, a canyon of dark buildings. I checked the paper schedule, knowing it was hopeless. The last bus had left an hour ago. I sighed, Digging in my pocket for cab fare I did not have, my mind racing. It was a 5-mile walk home. A pair of headlights painted the street. A car was cruising slowly toward me. A black Maserati, its engine a low, powerful purr that sounded expensive and dangerous. It pulled up directly beside me. The tinted passenger window slid down with a silent hum. Matteo Romano was in the driver's seat. He was alone. He looked at me, his face half in shadow, half in the sickly orange light of the street lamp. "Get in, Lena," he said. "I will take you home." I clutched the strap of my bag. "No, thank you. I am fine." He did not smile. He did not try to convince me. He just looked at the empty street, then back at me. The last bus already left. It was a simple statement of fact. My heart, which I thought had finally slowed down, began to hammer against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. The street was silent, and so was he, waiting. I stood on the empty sidewalk, the sound of the Maserati's engine a low, velvet threat in the 2 a.m. silence. Matteo Romano watched me, his face half in shadow, waiting for my answer. "The last bus already left," he had said. He was right, and as I stood there, caught between a 5-mile walk through dangerous streets and getting into a car with a man who was infinitely more dangerous, my entire day flashed before my eyes, not just the disaster at the restaurant, but the beginning of it. My mind cut back 17 hours. The alarm felt like a drill in my skull. It was 5:30 in the morning. The gray Chicago light barely penetrated the single, grime-covered window of my apartment. It was cheap. It was small. And the radiator always smelled like burning dust. On the kitchen counter, next to the coffee pot, sat the stack. A pile of envelopes, mostly white with clear windows, some an angry, urgent red, medical bills. My father's, he was 300 miles away in a state facility, his lungs scarred and failing, a complication from a life of hard labor. I was working 2 jobs to keep him there, to keep the machines breathing for him. This job, the morning one at Gianetti's Corner Cafe, and the night job, the good money job, at Ristorante Aurelio. I splashed cold water on my face and looked at the girl in the cracked mirror. She looked tired. She looked like a quitter. I had been in school for community nursing. I was good at it. I understood the chemistry. I understood the empathy. I understood how to comfort someone who was terrified. What I did not understand was the debt. The student loans piled up just as my father's health collapsed, so I did the only thing I could. I dropped out. I touched the small silver key at my throat, a nervous habit. It was my mother's. She was a second-generation Italian-American, a woman who believed in saints and good sauce and the power of a clean floor. She'd been gone 2 years now, taken by a cancer that moved too fast. She gave me this key when I was accepted into the nursing program. "It opens doors, Lena," she had said, her voice already thin, "and it keeps promises." So far, it felt like it only locked them. I was 27 years old, and I was further from that promise than I had ever been. My roommate, Nora, was already gone. Her side of the room was a vortex of discarded blue scrubs and heavy textbooks. Nora was an emergency room resident, which meant she ran on stale coffee and a level of weaponized cynicism that I found both terrifying and comforting. She was the one who saw the exhaustion under my skin. "Lena," she had said just last night, her eyes dark with her own fatigue as she stirred instant coffee, "this is not sustainable. You are going to collapse, and I will be the one stitching you up." She was also the one who warned me, constantly, about the world I dipped my toes into every night at Aurelio. Men in luxury cars, Lena, are not fairy tales, she insisted. They are weighted blankets. They feel safe and heavy and warm until you realize you cannot get up and you cannot breathe. I pulled on my own worn uniform, grabbed a piece of dry toast, and walked the 6 blocks to the cafe. Gianetti's Corner was already humming. Mrs. Gianetti, the owner, was there, her silver hair in a neat bun, her hands already covered in flour. She was a widow, an immigrant from the old country, and she had known my mother. She treated me like a daughter. always slipping me a pastry I did not pay for and telling me I was too thin. But she carried a complex sadness. She knew this neighborhood, the real one. She had seen things. She would sometimes look out the window at a passing black sedan, a car too expensive for this street, and she would quickly cross herself, whispering about the old families. She never said their names, but everyone knew. The Romano family, they were not just landlords, they were the ecosystem. The rumors were everywhere. Whispered over espresso and bread, they ran the docks. They controlled the nightlife. They had their hands in the unions and, of course, the best restaurants in the city, including Aurelio. The new one, Matteo, was the talk of the neighborhood, the son. He had gone away, gotten a fancy education, a business degree from some Ivy League school. Some said he was trying to make the family legitimate, pulling them out of the shadows. Others laughed at that. They said he was just smarter about being a criminal, that he was twice as hard as his father because his cruelty was organized. He did not break legs, he broke contracts, he broke corporations. The result was the same. That afternoon, the sky opened up. It was a cold, miserable Chicago sleet that drove everyone from the streets. The cafe was empty, quiet except for the hiss of the espresso machine and the ticking of the old clock. The bell above the cafe door jingled. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. It was him, Matteo Romano. I froze behind the counter, my hand halfway to wiping a cup. He was not wearing the impossibly dark suit from my later nightmares. He was dressed in a way I could only describe as casually elegant. Dark trousers, a soft gray cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my father's monthly care. He looked like a university professor or an architect, not a mob boss. He was alone. He did not look at me, not at first. He walked to the counter and smiled at Mrs. Gianetti. It was a genuine smile, and it transformed his face, smoothing the hard lines, making him look younger. Signora, he said, his voice warm and low. Un espresso doppio, per favore. His Italian was perfect, not the rough, beautiful dialect my nonna used, but clean, educated, Florentine, Mrs. Gianetti, a woman who feared nothing, not even the health inspector, actually blushed. She returned his greeting in Italian, her hands fluttering as she prepared the drink. She, who knew all about the old families and their sins, was treating him with a deference that sent a chill right down my spine. Grazie, he said, and paid with a $50 bill, waving off the change. He took his small cup to a window table. Looking out at the rain, the cafe was otherwise empty. I busied myself, wiping down the already spotless machine, keeping my back to him, praying he would just drink his coffee and leave. You have unsteady hands for this job. His voice. It was not loud, but it carried, just as it had in the restaurant. I turned, my dish rag in my hand. He was watching me, not like he watched me at Aurelio later, not with that possessive, sharp curiosity. This was a flat, cool, analytical gaze. I am fine, I said. No, you are not, he replied, taking a sip of his coffee. You are exhausted, Mrs. Gianetti says you work 2 jobs. I felt a flush of anger. Mrs. Gianetti talks too much. He ignored that, his eyes never leaving my face. She also said you were in nursing school, community health. I stopped wiping. I gripped the rag until my knuckles were white. That is correct. He leaned forward, placing his cup carefully in its saucer. He looked at me, really looked at me, and his eyes were sharp, intelligent. He wasn't flirting. He was not trying to intimidate me. He was, I realized with a jolt, gathering data. Then he asked the question, the one that hit like a physical blow, right in the softest, weakest part of me. Why did you quit? He asked, his voice quiet. Was it the money, or were you afraid? I stared at him, the sheer, unmitigated audacity of it. This man, who probably had never worried about a bill in his entire privileged life, sitting there in his cashmere, asking me about fear and money. I wanted to throw the wet rag at his face. Instead, I lifted my chin. I gave him the same brittle sarcasm, the same weak armor I would use hours later, kneeling on the marble floor. It was both, I said, my voice tight. And it was because life is not a textbook. Sir, Sometimes the numbers do not add up. I expected him to laugh, or to lecture me, or to dismiss me as a bitter little girl. He did none of those things. He just watched me for a long, unblinking moment. Then he gave that same small, almost invisible smile I would see again, a smile of acknowledgement, not judgment. He nodded slowly, as if I had just confirmed a theory he had. "No," he said very quietly. "It rarely does." He finished his coffee in silence and left. The $50 bill was still on the counter. When my shift ended at 4, I was exhausted, dreading the restaurant. Mrs. Giannetti called me over. She was holding a thick, cream-colored envelope. "He left this for you," she said, her face troubled, her accent thick. "Matteo?" My stomach did a slow, sick roll. "What is it?" "I do not know, Lena. He said you were a serious person and might be interested." I took it from her. The cardstock was heavy, expensive, the kind I only ever cleared away from rich tables. My name, Lena Caruso, was written on the front in elegant, strong black script. Inside, there was no note. There was no explanation. There was only a formal invitation. It was to a gala. This upcoming weekend, a fundraiser for the Romano Family Pediatric Fund, hosted by, and this was the part that made my heart stop and then start again, too fast, Signora Rosa Romano. His mother. It was just an invitation. There was no command to attend. There was no offer of a dress, no car, no hint of a transaction. It was just a piece of paper. But it was not. It was a door. Nora's voice was in my head, a weighted blanket. I stood there in the cafe, smelling the sweet coffee and the old world flower, holding this invitation in my hand. I could throw it away. I could pretend it never happened. I could go to my shift at Aurelio, serve men like him, and keep my head down, praying the medical bills would magically stop coming. That was the safe, sensible thing to do. Or I could go. Going meant stepping into his world, the world of luxury cars and quiet violence, the world Nora warned me about, the world Mrs. Giannetti crossed herself over, but not going felt like something else. It felt like closing a door that, for some insane reason, a man like Matteo Romano had just nudged open. I clutched the invitation, my heart beating a strange, heavy rhythm. I did not know what to do. Hours later, I would drop the plates, I would curse, and he would find my mother's key. And now, here I was, standing at a dark bus stop, staring at the man himself. The invitation feeling like it was burning a hole in my pocket. I spent the next 2 days staring at that thick, cream-colored invitation. It sat on my cheap kitchen counter, looking absurd next to the stack of red-windowed envelopes, my father's medical bills. When Nora, my roommate, finally saw it, she stopped, her coffee mug halfway to her lips. "A gala at the Romano estate," she asked, her voice flat with the disbelief of an emergency room resident who has seen everything. "Lena, that is not a party. That is a summons. Do not go. Men like that, they do not give invitations. They set traps." I knew she was right. I knew it with every tired bone in my body. It was a trap. But standing there, looking at the bill for my father's pulmonary medication, I knew that not going was its own kind of trap. It was accepting my fate, accepting the marble floor and the spilled veal and the endless, grinding shifts. It was admitting I was stuck. On the night of the gala, I made my decision. I would not be bought. I would not be intimidated. I would just be present. I did not have a gown. I had my black server pants and a collection of worn-out t-shirts. I borrowed a dress from Nora. It was a simple, dark blue sheath she had worn to a single hospital benefit. It was elegant but severe. It was not a Cinderella dress. It was armor. I pulled my hair back into a tight, severe bun. I did my own makeup, just enough to hide the dark circles under my eyes. I wore my comfortable, scuffed server flats, hidden under the dress's long hem. I would not accept a single thing from him. I would not be in his debt. I took a taxi I could not afford to the address on the invitation. The Romano estate was not a house. It was a fortress of dark stone and sheer glass perched on the edge of Lake Michigan. It looked like it could withstand a siege. I walked up the long, heated driveway, feeling impossibly small. The women stepping out of gleaming black cars were draped in jewels that could have paid off my father's care for a decade. As I entered the grand hall, a wave of noise and expensive perfume hit me. And the eyes swept over me. It was a look I knew well from Ristorante Aurelio, a rapid, silent calculation of my worth based on my shoes, my bag, my dress. It was a high society scan, and I was coming up item not found. I was looking for a dark corner to blend into when he appeared. Matteo Romano. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him so perfectly it looked molded to his skin. He looked nothing like the casual professor in the cafe, and everything like the man who had commanded the entire restaurant with a single, quiet whisper. He saw me across the crowded room. His expression did not change, but his eyes focused, that intense, unnerving, analytical focus. He walked toward me. He did not offer his arm. He did not try to kiss my hand. He stopped a precise, respectful 2 feet away, creating a small, invisible bubble around us. "Lena," he said, his voice that low, smooth baritone that seemed to vibrate in my chest. "I am glad you came." He was not fawning. He was not possessive. He just stood near me, a subtle, powerful signal to the rest of the room. He did not introduce me. He just made it clear that I belonged at his side. A woman approached, moving with the same deliberate, predatory grace as Matteo. She was older, slender, and wore a black dress of breathtaking simplicity. Her hair was silver, and her eyes were the same dark, intelligent black as her son's. This had to be Signora Rosa Romano. She smiled at me. It was a thin, polite expression that did not reach her eyes. It was a blade sheathed in velvet. "You must be Miss Caruso," she said, her voice crisp and educated. "My son mentioned you." She tilted her head, her gaze sweeping over my borrowed dress with a speed that left me feeling naked. "He said you were studying community health." I felt my spine straighten. "I was, Signora," I replied, my voice steady. I would not lie. "I am currently working at Ristorante Aurelio and Gianetti's cafe to manage my father's medical expenses." I would not hide it. I would not let her think I was ashamed of where I came from, or that I was pretending to be one of them. Her sharp eyes assessed me. "A noble profession," she said, her tone perfectly neutral, which made it feel colder than an insult, and a difficult one. Before she could continue her polite, bloodless interrogation, a younger man joined us. He was handsome in a flashy, over-polished way, all white teeth and expensive cologne. He was the opposite of Matteo's quiet intensity. "Matteo," he boomed, his eyes landing on me immediately. "You are hiding the most beautiful woman in the room." He turned to me, grabbing my hand. "Lorenzo Romano," he said. He did not shake it. He turned it over and held it, his thumb stroking my bare palm in a practiced, invasive gesture that made my skin crawl. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened just slightly. "A new friend of the family," he asked Matteo, but his hungry eyes were still all over me. Matteo did not move, but his voice dropped 10 degrees, becoming flat and cold. "Lorenzo." We were discussing business. Lorenzo's smile faltered. Just for a second, see. He immediately released my hand as if it had suddenly become red hot. "Of course, cousin," he said, stepping back. "Business. Always business." He gave me one last lingering look that felt like a greasy fingerprint, and then he melted back into the crowd. We moved into the main ballroom for the charity auction. They were auctioning fine art, exotic trips, cases of wine that cost more than my car. Then they started the main fundraiser. They put patient profiles up on the huge screens. Real children, real complex diagnoses. The details were specific. They were raising money for specialized surgical equipment, for operating room costs. I watched the numbers climb. $100,000, $200,000. I am good with numbers. I have to be. Managing 2 jobs, 2 paychecks, and the crushing interest rates on my father's medical debt. I was listening to the presenter talk about the foundation's efficiency, about its operating costs, and I was comparing it to the amounts being raised on the stage. Something was wrong. The math did not add up. The percentage they claimed went to administrative fees and gala costs seemed incredibly, impossibly high. It was a slick, emotional presentation, but the numbers were cloudy. We were seated at the head table. A man next to me, a major donor whose name was on a hospital wing, was boasting about the foundation's structure. "Rosa runs a tight ship," he said loudly, sipping his champagne. "One of the most efficient in the city." I felt the words slip out before I could stop them. What is the actual percentage of funds that reaches the patients directly? The table went quiet. The donor turned, looking at me as if I'd just dumped my water glass on his lap. He gave a small, condescending laugh. "It is one of the best foundations in the city, young lady," he scoffed. "We have a 90% efficiency rating." 90% of what exactly? I countered. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the murmuring. 90% of the net profits or 90% of the gross. After the gala costs, the administrative salaries and the consulting fees are deducted. Your operational model seems to have a significant buffer that is not transparent. The donor's face turned a shade of dark red. I felt a kick of pure, adrenaline-fueled panic. I had done it again. I had opened my mouth in a room full of people who could crush me. Rosa Romano's eyes had narrowed into slits. She was looking at me with cold fury. I looked at Matteo, and he was not angry. He was not embarrassed. He was watching me with that same intense, analytical focus from the cafe. He was perfectly still. He leaned in, ignoring the sputtering donor beside me. "How would you do it, Lena?" he asked, his voice so quiet it was only for me. As if we were the only two people in the room, I met his gaze. "I would use a direct impact model," I said, my voice gaining strength. "Earmark specific donations for specific procedures and equipment, not for a vague general fund, and I would demand a fully independent public audit with the results published for every donor to see." The donor looked like he was about to have a stroke. Rosa was looking at her son, her expression unreadable, her face a mask of iron. Before anyone could speak again, Matteo's phone vibrated once, a dark buzz on the white tablecloth. He glanced down at it. His entire demeanor shifted in a fraction of a second. The calm, interested host vanished. The man in charge, the man who had silenced the restaurant, was back. He looked at his mother, and a silent, sharp communication passed between them. He stood up, placing his napkin on the table. "Please excuse me," he said to the table. "A shipping concern at Pier 14 requires my attention." He turned to one of the men who had been standing guard by the wall, the same man who had been with him at Aurelio, the quieter of the two. "Gabe," Matteo said, "take Miss Caruso home. See that she arrives safely." He looked at me, his face impassive. "We will continue this discussion." And then he was gone, moving quickly and silently through the crowd. Gabe, he was the one who looked like a solid block of granite. He just nodded, his face impossible to read. "Miss..." He led me out a side door, away from the main entrance, to a black sedan that was expensive but not flashy. I got in. The silence in the car was heavy, absolute. Gabe just drove, his eyes on the road, his hands steady at 10 and 2. We were on Lakeshore Drive, the city lights a blur outside the window. When I noticed it, a pair of headlights, a dark sedan, had been behind us for 10 minutes. It changed lanes when we changed lanes. "We are being followed," I said, my voice small. Gabe did not even look in his rearview mirror. "Yes, miss." He did not speed up. He simply took the next exit, a sharp, sudden turn that pressed me back into the leather seat. The car behind us followed. Gabe took another right, then a hard left, then a sudden, jarring U-turn that made the tires squeal. He pulled into a brightly lit, 24-hour gas station, parking directly in front of the attendant's window. The other car slowed. It drove past the entrance, paused for a moment at the end of the block, and then sped off into the night. Gabe sat there for a full minute, his gaze fixed on the road where the car had disappeared. He was perfectly calm. His breathing was slow and even. This was routine for him. "It is clear," he said, and pulled the car smoothly back onto the street. I was shaking. My hands were freezing, despite the car's heater, but my mind was working. Clicking into that place it goes during a bad dinner rush, my server brain, the one trained to remember 10 complex orders at once, to notice the small details. "The license plate," I said. Gabe glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his expression surprised. It was an Illinois plate. Baker, George, 937, Victor. I had a knack for it. Remembering details under pressure was my only real skill. Gabe just nodded, a flicker of new respect in his eyes. "Thank you, miss." He dropped me at my apartment building. I watched him wait until I was safely inside the lobby door before the black sedan pulled away. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs, my legs weak. My hand was at my throat, clutching my mother's key. I pulled out my phone. My fingers were still trembling. This was none of my business. This was his world, the world Nora had warned me about, the car tailing me, the shipping concern at Pier 14, the way Lorenzo had looked at me. I should run. I should delete the number misses. Giannetti had given me in case of emergency when she gave me the invitation, but I thought of the car speeding away. I thought of Matteo's quiet question. How would you do it? I had stepped into his world. Now, I took another step. I opened a new message. To Matteo Romano, I typed the license plate. Baker, George, 937, Victor. I hit send. No explanation, no context, just the data. For the first time, I was not just reacting to my life. I was participating. I fumbled for my apartment key, my mind racing. I pushed the door open, ready for the wave of relief, for the safety of my small, shabby room. And then I saw it. It was a plain white envelope. It had been slipped under my door. No name, no stamp. It had been placed there while I was at the gala. My heart stopped. I picked it up. It was heavy, the paper thick. Inside, there was no note. There was only a photograph, glossy, printed on high-quality paper. It was me. I was at the gala, standing near the bar, and I was talking to Lorenzo Romano. It was the exact moment he had grabbed my hand, his thumb on my palm, his face close to mine. The angle was from across the room. Someone had been watching me. Someone had photographed me talking to the one man Matteo had so clearly and coldly put in his place. A cold, sharp fear, colder than the lake wind, settled deep in my stomach. The gala had not been an invitation. It had been a test. And this photograph was not a memory. It was a warning. My mother's key felt like a block of ice against my skin. I stared at the photograph until the glossy image blurred. Me and Lorenzo, his hand on mine. It was a threat, clear and simple. But from who? From Lorenzo. Warning me away from Matteo, or from Matteo. Warning me about Lorenzo. My brain felt like it was splitting in two. My phone vibrated on the counter, making me jump so hard I nearly screamed. A text from Matteo. It was not a question. It was a command, disguised as a suggestion. Harold Washington Library, 3rd floor, noon tomorrow. The library. It was the most public, most neutral, most heavily secured place in the city. It was a brilliant choice. It meant he wanted to talk, not intimidate. It meant he knew I was smart enough to be afraid. I did not sleep. The next day, I walked into the vast, echoing atrium of the library feeling like every security camera was watching only me. I found him on the 3rd floor, in the American History section, sitting at a heavy oak table, reading a book. He looked like a graduate student, intense and focused. He looked up as I approached, his eyes scanning me, noting the fear. "You are punctual," he said by enclosing his book. I sat opposite him. My hands clasped so tightly in my lap they ached. I did not mention the photograph. I would not show him that card. I would play my own. "You asked me how I would fix your foundation," I said, my voice a low, shaking whisper. The people at the next table could not hear us. "I told you, an independent audit." He watched me, his face impassive. You are mixing business with charity. Lena, it is complicated. It is not complicated, I said, leaning forward. It is theft. You are letting someone steal from sick children. I saw the numbers. The buffer, the administrative cost, it is a lie. You know it, and I know it. I had expected him to deny it, to get angry, to shut me down. He did not. He just held my gaze for a long, heavy minute. The license plate you sent me, he said, changing the subject so abruptly it gave me whiplash. It was helpful. I do not care about your shipping containers. Mateo, I care about the hospital fund. They are connected, he said. He leaned forward, his voice dropping even lower. I have engaged an outside firm, a real one, Kroll. They will review the books from top to bottom. I sat back, stunned. He had agreed, just like that. You did the right thing, he said. Now let me handle it. I left the library feeling like I had walked through a fire and not been burned, but I also felt like a pawn in his game. I was reacting to him, to Lorenzo, to the photograph. I needed something that was mine. I took the wad of cash he had left at Ristorante Aurelio, the money I had not wanted to touch, and I walked to the bursar's office at the city college. I re-enrolled, just one class, 2 nights a week, community health principles, the same one I had dropped. It was a stupid small act of defiance, but it was mine. Mateo found out. I did not know how, but he always knew. He did not offer to pay my tuition. He did not send a check. He respected the boundary I had drawn. Instead, he did something quieter, sharper. He sent me a name. Dr. Aris Thorne, retired head of nursing from Chicago Presbyterian. He is expecting your call. The text read, he mentors promising students. A connection, a mentor. Not a handout, but a door held open. It was more intimate, more terrifying, and more seductive than any amount of money. Then, his mother called, Signora Rosa Romano. She did not text. She called my phone directly, her voice like crisp, cold silk. Gianetti's Cafe, 1 hour. When I arrived, she was sitting at the same table Mateo had occupied, a tiny espresso cup in her hand, Mrs. Gianetti was nowhere to be seen, the cafe suddenly empty in the middle of the afternoon. Miss Caruso, she said, gesturing for me to sit, you have my son's full attention. This is unusual. He's a man of singular focus, and you have become that focus. I said nothing. I am not here to threaten you, she said, which was, in itself, a threat. I am here to offer you clarity. You are a smart girl. You see the numbers. So see these. My son's world is dangerous, not just for him, but for everyone he cares about. She took a sip of her espresso. If you stay near him, you will be protected. He will build a fortress around you. But you must understand this, and you must understand it completely. The protection he offers is shaped like a cage. It has to be. It is the only way he knows how to keep things truly safe. She placed her cup down with a sharp click. Are you prepared to live in a cage, Miss Caruso? Even a gilded one, because you stopped being just a waitress the moment you quoted audit figures at his table. I was still reeling from Rosa's velvet-gloved warning when Lorenzo called. It was all false charm and slick energy. Lena? Kara, I heard you were the life of the party. My cousin. He's so serious. All business. Listen, I run a few of the clubs, and we do our own little fundraisers. Much more fun, I promise. Come by the Port Shore tonight. See how we really get things done. My blood ran cold. The Port Shore. The same name I had seen on a few vendor sheets at Aurelio. I knew I should say no. I knew it was a nest of snakes. But I thought of the photograph of me and him. I thought of Rosa's cage. I was not going to be scared into a corner. I'm not sure. I said, bring a friend, he boomed. Make it a girls' night, my treat. I did the stupidest thing I have ever done. I asked Nora. Absolutely not, she said, her eyes wide with horror when I found her at home. She was wearing scrubs, looking exhausted. A Romano club. Are you clinically insane? That is not a fundraiser, Lena. That is a crime scene. Please, Nora, I begged. I do not want to go alone. I am scared. Just as a buffer, 1 hour. We will be in and out. Please. She stared at me. Her face a mix of anger and the deep, protective loyalty that made her a brilliant emergency room doctor. "Fine," she hissed. "1 hour, 2 drinks maximum, and I am driving. And if I say we leave, we leave. No arguments." The port shore was nothing like the gala. It was dark, loud, and the air was thick with smoke and the smell of spilled liquor. It was full of the same rich people, but here, their masks were off. Lorenzo was the king, and he greeted us like royalty. Seating us in a plush VIP booth, he was all over me, his hand on my back, his voice in my ear. He introduced me to a dozen people as Mateo's new financial analyst and laughed, but his eyes were not laughing. Nora was rigid beside me, nursing a club soda, her eyes darting around the room, assessing every threat. I needed to get away from his hand, from the noise. "I need the ladies' room," I said. I slipped away from the booth. I walked down a hallway, but I must have taken a wrong turn. It became quiet, carpeted. I was in a private area. A door at the end of the hall was slightly open. I heard Lorenzo's voice from inside. He was laughing, loud and arrogant. I should have turned. I should have run back to Nora, but I peeked. The office was dim, lit only by a desk lamp. Lorenzo was not there. He was in the next room, but his desk was a mess of papers, and on it, a large, leather-bound book was open, a ledger. My heart stopped. The header on the page read Port Shore Logistics, and I saw it, a line item, dated just after the gala. RFPF contribution, a massive number, and then, on the next line, a transfer, consulting fee, the exact same massive number, transferred out to a numbered account. He was not just skimming, he was siphoning. He was draining the pediatric fund through a shell company named after his own club. Nora was right. It was an evidence locker. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. I pulled out my phone. I silenced the shutter. I leaned in. I took 3 quick pictures of the open page, looking for something, sweetheart, a deep, gravelly voice. I spun around. A man, built like a vending machine, was blocking the doorway. His hand was inside his suit jacket. Lorenzo appeared behind him. The slick, charming smile was gone. His face was cold, reptilian, depicted. "My cousin's little waitress," he said, his voice soft and deadly. "Playing accountant." Nora appeared at the end of the hall, her face pale. "Lena, what are you—" She stopped. She saw the ledger. She saw the men. Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with pure terror. "Get her." Lorenzo ordered the big man. The man lunged, grabbing my arm, his fingers like steel traps. "I would not do that." The voice was new, flat, calm, and carrying absolute authority. Gabe, Mateo's man. He was standing at the end of the hall, 10 feet away. He had appeared from nowhere, a silent, solid ghost in a dark suit. Lorenzo's face twisted with rage. "This is my club. Gabe, my business. Stay out of it." "Mateo asked me to ensure Miss Caruso enjoyed her evening," Gabe said, his voice never changing pitch. He looked at me, then at Lorenzo. "She does not look like she is enjoying herself. We are leaving. Both of them." It was a standoff. The air crackled. Lorenzo was vibrating, his hand clenched into a fist, but Gabe did not move. He was a rock. "Finally," Lorenzo sneered and let out a sharp laugh. He nodded to the man, who released my arm. "Fine," Lorenzo spat. "Take the garbage out, but tell my cousin to keep his pets on a leash." Gabe did not acknowledge him. He just nodded at me. "Miss Caruso, doctor." He walked us out, his body positioned slightly behind us, a living shield. Nora did not say a word until we were in her car, speeding away. Then she started shaking so hard she had to pull over. "What did you do?" "Lena," she sobbed, hitting the dashboard. "What did you do? They are going to kill us. They saw my face. They are going to kill me." The bond between us, the easy trust, felt like it had just snapped. I did not go home. I went to the cafe. I worked my morning shift on 0 sleep and pure, unfiltered terror. A man in a cheap, rumpled suit came in. He looked tired. He ordered a black coffee and sat at the counter. "Miss Caruso," he said quietly. I nodded. He flashed a badge. So quickly I almost missed it. "Detective Reyes, Chicago Police." My heart felt like it was going to burst through my chest. I'm looking into some local business owners," he said, stirring his coffee. "Seems some Italian restaurants in this neighborhood are having some protection issues, extortion. You serve a lot of these men at Aurelio. You see anything?" He was not aggressive. He was not a thug. He was just a tired cop doing his job. His eyes were kind. I was trapped. Between Lorenzo, between Matteo, and now the law. "I just serve the food, detective," I said, my voice thin. "I keep my head down. I do not see anything." Detective Reyes studied my face. He knew I was lying. "I get it," he said softly. "It is a tough position, but you seem smart. If you ever do see anything, keep your head down, but keep your eyes open." He placed his card on the counter. "Be safe." That night, Matteo was waiting for me, not in a car. He was standing in the shadows of my apartment building's hallway. "You went to his club," he stated. It was not a question. "He invited me," I shot back, my fear making me angry. "You took pictures." I froze. "How did you—" "Gabe," he said. "He's very observant. Show me." I was cornered. I took out my phone and showed him the photos of the ledger. Matteo looked at them, his face carved from dark marble. He was silent for a long time. "I know," he said. So quietly I barely heard him. "You know," I whispered, horrified. "You know he is stealing from a children's fund, and you let him." He finally looked at me, and his eyes were full of a cold, ancient anger. I knew he was skimming. I did not have the proof of how— "You just gave it to me." He ran a hand over his face. "There are rules. Lena, my father had them. I have them. You do not touch hospitals. You do not touch schools. And you never, ever steal from children. That is sacred. Lorenzo broke the code." He explained it. The family was old, with factions. Lorenzo controlled the docks and the clubs. He was ambitious, greedy, and sloppy. "What about the car that followed me from the gala?" "Lorenzo's men," Matteo said. "He was curious about you. And the license plate I sent you." "The one Gabe saw," Matteo's face hardened. "That was not Lorenzo. That was Bratva, the Russians. They're trying to move in on Pier 14. Lorenzo was supposed to be handling it. He's failing. The explosion at the pier 2 nights ago. That was a message from them." My world was tilting. It was not just one bad guy. It was an ecosystem of sharks. Matteo's morality was a shifting, dangerous gray, but it had a line, and his cousin had just crossed it in blood-red ink. "My mother is calling a council," Matteo said, his voice final. "This has to be settled." He left me at my door. I was the fuse. My stupid, reckless pictures were the evidence that would start a war. Nora was not home. She had texted me from the hospital. "I am staying here. I am too scared to go back." I locked my door. Piling a chair underneath the knob, I lay on my bed, fully clothed. My mother's key clutched in my fist. I must have fallen asleep. I woke to the sound of paper sliding across the wooden floor. A whisper. Someone slipping something under my door. I held my breath, not moving for a full minute. Then I crept to the door. Another plain white envelope. I picked it up. My hands were numb. I opened it. It was a photograph. Not of me. It was Nora. She was in her blue scrubs, walking out of the main entrance of the hospital after a long night shift. She was alone. She looked exhausted. And at the bottom, written in thick, blunt black marker, were 2 words. "Shut up." I held the photograph of Nora in my hand, and the fear was so cold and total it burned away all my exhaustion. This was not a warning. This was a death threat, aimed at the only person I had left. Lorenzo was not just a thief. He was a cornered animal, and he had just shown me he was willing to hurt anyone to save himself. My anger became a sharp, lucid point. I was done being a pawn. I was done being scared. I did not call Matteo. This was not his world to fix. This was a world of law, and Nora was an innocent. I looked at the business card Detective Reyes had left on the counter. His tired, kind eyes. "Keep your head down, but keep your eyes open." I made my choice. I went to an all-night copy shop 4 miles away. I printed the photos of Lorenzo's ledger. I put them in a plain manila envelope. I did not sign it. I did not type a note. I mailed it to Detective Reyes's precinct, to his personal attention. Then I called him from a payphone. "Detective Reyes," I said, my voice disguised, low and rough. "You have an envelope coming. It concerns Port Shore Logistics and the Romano Pediatric Fund. You are looking for an extortionist. You should be looking for a thief." "Who is this?" he asked, his voice suddenly sharp, alert. "It does not matter," I said, "oh, but the information is good. I have a condition. You will get your evidence, but I need something. There is a witness, a civilian, a doctor at Chicago Presbyterian named Nora Allen. She is in danger. She needs immediate full-time, invisible protection." "How do I know this is real?" "You will know when you see the ledger. Protect her. And one more thing. Do not move on the fund. Not yet. There is another event. The annual children's benefit. The auditors, a real firm, are presenting. Let them expose Lorenzo publicly. Let the donors and the press see the truth before the police raid the place. It is the only way to save the fund itself. Otherwise, you will just destroy it, and the kids get nothing." There was a long silence on the line. "You are asking a lot," he said. "I am giving you Lorenzo Romano on a silver platter. Detective, protect the witness. Let the audit happen. Then you can have him." I hung up. Matteo knew. Of course he knew. He found me at the cafe, walking in just as I was opening. The sky still a dark, bruised purple. "Mrs." Giannetti took one look at his face and vanished into the back kitchen. "You went to the police," he said. It was not an accusation. It was a statement of fact, but his voice was tight, strained. "I went to protect my friend," I said, my hands not shaking. "Not anymore." "Your cousin threatened her." He sent me her picture. "This is not your world anymore. Matteo, this is mine. Nora is an innocent. She is not part of your family's code." I expected him to yell, to be furious that I had broken his omerta, that I had brought in the cops. He stood there, in the quiet, dark cafe, smelling of coffee and the cold night air. He looked at the floor, then back at me. His face was a mask of conflict. "You drew a line," he said, his voice quiet, almost admiring. "You told me I did not touch hospitals or children. You are doing the same. You are protecting what is sacred to you, your friend." He took a step closer, but did not touch me. "The audit is tonight. My mother is fast-tracking the presentation. You were right. Kroll confirmed everything. It is all him. Port Shore Logistics is his personal bank account." "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now," he said, his eyes hard. "We let the blade fall. If you are doing the right thing to save the children. Lena, I will step back. Let the audit do its work. But be ready. When my cousin is exposed, he will not go quietly." The next night, I was not at the gala. I was at Ristorante Aurelio, on shift, my hands shaking so badly I was only allowed to polish silver in the kitchen. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from a number I did not recognize. A single link. It was a live feed of the pediatric benefit. I watched on my small, cracked screen, hiding in the dry storage room. The smell of oregano and dried pasta in the air. A man in a gray suit from Kroll was at the podium. He was not emotional. He was not slick. He was a machine. He just read the numbers. He detailed the shell company, Port Shore Logistics. He explained the exact mechanism of the siphon. He named the sole proprietor of the company, Lorenzo Romano. The room in the video was silent. A vast, stunned silence from the city's most powerful people. I saw Rosa Romano, sitting in the front row, her face like a marble statue. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Matteo. My blood turned to ice. It was not a text. It was a picture. It was Nora. She was in a dark room, her hands bound with a zip tie, her mouth covered with duct tape. She was crying, her eyes wide with absolute terror. Then the call came through. It was Lorenzo's voice, high and frantic, like a cornered rat. "You bitch," he screamed. "You and your cop-loving cousin. You think you won. You just killed your friend. I have the doctor. Matteo, you want her back. You bring her. You bring the waitress. And you bring every original document you have, every ledger, every piece of Kroll's report. Pier 14, Warehouse B, 1 hour, or the doctor learns how to swim with her hands tied." The line went dead. I ran. I ran out of the restaurant, ripping off my apron. I did not know what I was doing, only that I had to go, before I even hit the street. A black sedan screeched to a halt in front of me. Gabe. He threw the passenger door open. "Get in!" Mateo was in the back seat. His face was white with a rage so cold it was terrifying. "He has her." "I am going," I said. It was not a question. "No," Mateo said, his voice a low growl. "You are not. This is a family matter." "He asked for me." I shouted, my voice cracking. "This is my fault. I showed Nora the ledger. I am the one he wants. You need me. I am your leverage." Mateo stared at me, his jaw working. "And I am a nurse," I said, my mind racing, clicking into that calm, procedural place. "Or I was? She is tied up. He's stupid and sloppy. He will have tied the zip ties too tight, her hands, her circulation. I can use that. I can talk to him. I can de-escalate. It is what I was trained to do." Mateo looked at Gabe. Gabe, the stoic rock, just gave a single, slow nod. "Fine," Mateo said, "but you do exactly what I say." We did not go straight to the pier. We met Detective Reyes in a dark alley 3 blocks away. He was not in a cheap suit. He was in full tactical gear, surrounded by a team that looked like they were ready to invade a small country. "He took the bait," Reyes said, his voice grim. "My team is in place." He looked at me. "You are not a cop, Miss Caruso. You are a civilian. You do not have to do this. He has my friend," I said. Good." Reyes pulled something from his vest. It was a microphone, a tiny, metallic disc. "We need his confession, clear and on tape. We need him to admit to the kidnapping, to the extortion. Keep him talking." I looked at the disc. Then I looked down at my chest, at the small silver key my mother had given me, the one Mateo had refastened. "Here," I said, my voice steady. I unhooked the necklace. "Put it here, on the back of the key. It is heavy. It will hide it." Reyes's technician took the key, his fingers working quickly with a piece of black adhesive. He handed it back. I put the chain back on. My mother's key, the symbol of opening doors and keeping promises, was now a tool. It was now my strategy. "Mateo," Reyes said, turning to him, "you stay back. You are a civilian in this, too. You go in. You are interfering with a federal investigation. We have the perimeter. We hear the confession. We move. Clear." Mateo's face was a storm. "You get her out alive, detective, or your investigation will be the least of your problems." "Just get me in," I said. Gabe drove us to the pier. The warehouse was a giant, dark box smelling of rust and dead fish. "He is alone," Mateo said, his phone in his hand. "He's stupid. He thinks he can negotiate his way out. He thinks he can use you to get to me, and use Nora to control you. Stay on the medical. Keep him talking about her hands." "I know," I said. I got out of the car. I walked toward the single lit doorway, alone. I stepped inside. The warehouse was vast, empty, lit by a few bare, dangling bulbs. In the center, I saw them. Lorenzo was holding Nora by the arm. She was standing, but she was trembling, her face pale and streaked with tears. "Lena," she cried, her voice muffled by the tape. Well, Lorenzo sneered, his face slick with sweat. "The brave little waitress and the financial analyst and the nurse, you are a lot of things. Are you not—" "Let her go," I said, my voice echoing in the huge space. "She has nothing to do with this. She has everything to do with this." He screamed, even his voice cracking. "She was with you. You set me up. You and Mateo. You turned my own family against me." "I did not," I said, walking slowly toward him. "You did. You stole from children." "Shut up. Where is he? Where is Mateo? And where are the files?" "He's not coming." I said, "This is between you and me. You wanted me. Here I am. Let Nora go. She's not part of the deal." "She is the deal," he shrieked, pulling her closer. He had a gun, a silver revolver, pressed against her head. "Look at her," I said, my voice shifting, becoming the calm, professional nurse. "Look at her hands. You tied them too tight." Lorenzo glanced down. Nora's fingers were blue. "The tape is too tight," I continued, moving another step closer. "She cannot breathe properly. You are causing nerve damage to her wrists. If you damage her, she is useless to you. She's a doctor. You will have permanently maimed her. Let me check her pulse. Let me loosen the ties. Then we can talk about the files." He was hesitating. He was stupid, panicked, and I was giving him an order he understood. He wanted his hostage in good condition. "Fine," he spat. "You slow, check her. But one move, and I shoot you both." I walked forward, my hands up. I reached Nora. I turned her so my back was to Lorenzo. I put my fingers on her wrist, feeling for a pulse. I was shielding her. "Nora, it is okay," I whispered, my mouth close to her ear. "I am here." You idiot." Lorenzo was ranting behind me. "You think you are so smart. The audit, the cops. I have been running that fund for 5 years. It was my money. My father earned it." "You stole it, Lorenzo," I said, loud and clear. "For the key at my throat. You stole from sick kids to fund your club." "It was mine," he screamed. "And you and Matteo, you took it." That was it, the confession. I felt Nora's pulse jump. I squeezed her hand. "Let her go, Lorenzo," I said. "It is over." "It is over when I say it is over," he yelled, and I heard the click of the gun's hammer. He grabbed Nora, pulling her back, using her as a human shield, the gun once again at her temple. Matteo appeared in the doorway. He was not supposed to be there. He was alone, his hands up. "Lorenzo," he called, his voice booming. "This is between us. Let them go. This is blood. This is family." "You're not my family," Lorenzo shrieked, his eyes wild, pointing the gun at Matteo, then at me, then back to Nora. He was breaking. This was the moment. He was distracted by Matteo. I looked at Lorenzo, and I did the only thing I could think of. I drew all his focus, all his rage onto me. I used the words from the restaurant, the words that had started all of this. I screamed them, my voice ripping from my throat, full of all the terror and rage I had. Managgia la miseria. It was a guttural, shocking sound in the tense silence. Lorenzo's head snapped toward me, his eyes wide with confusion and fury. "What did you—" It was the half-second they needed. The warehouse exploded with light, then the sound of shattering glass and a single sharp crack that was not a gunshot, but something harder. Lorenzo screamed, and his gun flew from his hand, skittering across the concrete floor. A red dot was on his remaining hand. Tactical officers were everywhere, pouring in from the shadows, shouting. Lorenzo was on the ground, screaming, clutching his shattered hand. Reyes was there, his gun drawn. Nora was free. She collapsed into me, sobbing, and I held her, my own legs giving way. And then, the final figure appeared. Signora Rosa Romano. She was standing in the doorway, untouched, her face a mask of absolute zero. She had been watching from somewhere. She walked past the officers. She did not look at me. She did not look at Nora. She walked right up to Matteo, who was standing over his cousin. Lorenzo was on the floor, weeping, clutching his hand. "Madre Rosa, please, he is family, blood." Rosa looked down at him, her face full of a profound, cold disgust. Then she looked at her son, Matteo. She gave one, sharp, final nod. It was not forgiveness. It was a death sentence. It was the signing of the order. Family honor, the family code, had been invoked. Bloodline had been severed. Matteo reached down, not for his cousin, but for a set of zip ties from an officer's belt, and he secured Lorenzo's one good hand. I was crying, tears of terror and relief pouring down my face. I was shaking so hard I could not stand, but I was holding Nora. I had kept my promise. I had saved my friend. I had drawn my line, and I had not let them pull me over it. The world did not stop spinning, but it slowed down. The aftermath of that night at Pier 14 was not a loud explosion. It was a series of quiet, heavy doors closing. Lorenzo was indicted. The combination of the Kroll audit, the financial trail I had found, and the crystal-clear audio from my mother's key was overwhelming. He was charged with wire fraud, embezzlement, and kidnapping. The Romano family's lawyers, the best in the city, did not defend him. They were conspicuously absent. He was left with a public defender. It was a message to the entire underworld he was no longer family. He was disavowed. With Lorenzo's organization collapsing, the power vacuum at the docks was real, but the bratva, The Russians who had been sniffing around retreated. The message Mateo had sent by cutting out his own blood was louder and more terrifying than any bomb at the pier. He had cleaned his own house. It was a sign of absolute cold control. The Romano Pediatric Fund was miraculously saved. The press had a field day with Lorenzo's arrest, but because the audit had been initiated internally by Rosa and Mateo, they were painted as the heroes, the reformers. Rosa, in a brilliant move, dissolved the entire old board. She instituted a new one, filled with community leaders and hospital administrators who had no family ties, the new bylaws, which I suspected Mateo had let me write the first draft of, explicitly forbade conflicts of interest and mandated a fully public, quarterly report. The fund was smaller, leaner, but it was finally clean. Detective Reyes met me for coffee, back at Gianetti's, not as a cop, but as a man. He looked tired. "You did a good thing, Miss Caruso," he said, stirring his cup. "You saved that fund, and you got a very bad man off the street." "You saved my friend," I said. He nodded, taking a sip. "I want to warn you. I have seen this before. You are walking a very, very thin line. You have been useful to Mateo Romano, but his world, it does not have a light side. It is all shadow, and sooner or later it will pull you in. It will ask you to compromise something you cannot get back. Be careful." "I know," I said, my voice quiet. I looked at him, and I did not flinch. "I am not one of his men, detective." "I know," he said. "That is what worries me." He stood up, leaving $3 on the counter for his coffee. "He will not deny you anything right now, but be careful what you ask for." He was right about Mateo. 2 days later, Mateo was waiting for me outside my apartment, not in the shadows, but on the front steps, in the bright, cold afternoon light. He looked like he had not slept in a week. "Your father's medical debt, Mo," he said. No greeting. "I have arranged to have it paid, all of it, and your tuition." It was the ultimate test, the gilded cage Rosa had warned me about, the weighted blanket Nora had described. I could feel the soft, heavy comfort of it settling over me. All my problems, all the crushing weight of those red envelopes, gone. I looked at him, at this powerful, dangerous man who was offering me the world I had been killing myself to earn. "No," I said. His face did not change, but a flicker of surprise showed in his dark eyes. "Lena, this is foolish pride. It is just money. It is not pride," I said, my voice shaking just a little. But I held his gaze. "It is my line, the one I drew. You do not get to pay for my life. You do not get to own my education. That is mine. My father's debt is my responsibility." I thought he would argue. I thought he would push. Instead, he just watched me for a long, quiet moment. He had offered me his power, and I had refused it. "Then what?" he asked. "You will keep working at the restaurant, keep killing yourself for tips." "I will keep my job at Aurelio," I said. "But I need scheduling flexibility for my classes, and I will find a way to pay for school. I will apply for scholarships." He nodded. A slow, strange understanding on his face. He was learning my rules. "Flexible scheduling," he said. "That I can do." A week later, a letter came. I had been awarded a new scholarship, the Community Health Leadership Grant. It was funded by a consortium of anonymous Chicago business leaders. It covered my full tuition and books. I knew, with absolute certainty, that Rosa Romano's name was at the top of that anonymous list. But it was not from Mateo. It was not his money. It was a grant I had not even applied for. It was a loophole. It was their way of respecting my boundary while still getting what they wanted. I decided I could live with that compromise. Nora moved. She got a new apartment, a high-security building across town, closer to the hospital. Our friendship was not broken, but it was different. It was bruised, tender. The terror I had put her through had left a scar. She came over to my old apartment to get the last of her things. We sat on the floor, surrounded by boxes, the way we used to. "He sent me an apology," she said, her voice quiet. "Mateo." My head snapped up. "Not a note," she said. "He had the entire emergency room trauma bay refitted, new lighting, new monitors, everything. The chief of surgery said an anonymous donor paid for it, but my boss told me Signora Romano herself approved the invoice. He was apologizing. Lena, in his language. She looked at me, her eyes clear and serious. I was wrong about you. I thought you were falling for the money, for the power, but you were not. You were just trying to do the right thing. You took the ledger, you went to the cops. You saved me. She reached out and squeezed my hand. You did not sell your soul, and you did not sell me out. The crack between us, the one I had feared was permanent, began to seal. A few weeks later, Rosa Romano came into Gianetti's cafe. It was just after the lunch rush. I was wiping down the counter. She did not come in a town car. She had walked from a few blocks away, wearing a simple, elegant wool coat. She sat at the counter, the same one where I had argued with the cop, where Matteo had confronted me. Un espresso, Lena, she said. I pulled the shot, my hands steady. I placed the small, white cup in front of her. She took a sip, her dark eyes evaluating me over the rim. You handled yourself well, she said. At the pier. You were afraid, but you were not a victim. You were strategic. I just nodded. She reached into her purse and pulled out a thin, manila folder. She slid it across the counter. These are not a gift, she said. They are a problem. I opened it. Inside were patient files, 3 of them, children from the near West Side, the neighborhood I had grown up in, all with complex, chronic conditions, all recently discharged, all with immigrant families who spoke little English and had no reliable follow-up care. The fund is clean now, Rosa said, but the system is still broken. These children will be back in the emergency room in 6 weeks if someone does not intervene. The hospital's community liaison is overwhelmed. I looked at the files. I saw the names, the diagnoses. I knew these streets. I knew these families. You are a student of community nursing. I doubt, she said. Your new scholarship requires an internship. This is it. You will report directly to Dr. Eris Thorne. But your findings, you bring them to me. I want to know where the money needs to go. No more buffers, no more waste. She finished her espresso and stood up. Placing a $10 bill on the counter, she paused at the door. Lena, she said, not looking back. My son is a good man, but he is a product of his world. If you choose to stay by his side, keep the human part of him awake. Do not let the rest of it put him to sleep. She left. I was holding the files. I was not in a cage. I was being given a job, a real one. I went back to school. I worked my nights at Aurelio, where Signore Valli now treated me with a terrified respect that was almost comical. And during the days I did my internship, I walked the streets of my old neighborhood. But this time, I was not a waitress. I was a nurse, or the beginning of one. I had a purpose. Matteo and we found a new rhythm. We set rules. It was the only way it could work. I will not ask you about Pier 14. I told him one night. We were in my apartment on my lumpy sofa. I will not ask about the Russians or the unions or anything that happens after midnight. That is your world. He nodded, his face serious. And I will not interfere with your work, your school, your friends. I will not pay your bills. And, I said, my voice softer, you cannot use your associates to solve my problems. No more anonymous scholarships. No more new trauma bays for my friends. He almost smiled at that. That was my mother. I know, I said. The rule applies to her, too. Agreed, he said. We learned how to date. It was strange and normal and completely upside down. He was a man who ran a criminal empire, but he was also just a man who was tired at the end of the day. He could not go to the movies. He could not go to a normal restaurant. He was always watching the door, always on guard. So I made him come to my world. One Saturday, my community program was running a youth basketball game at the local park. I was there, checking blood pressures. He showed up. He wore jeans and a simple black sweater. He stood at the edge of the court, his hands in his pockets, and he just watched. He watched the kids play. He watched me work. For 1 hour. He was not a boss. He was just a man, standing in the sun. And I would go to his world, his penthouse, a glass fortress high above the city. was the only place he was safe. I would bring groceries, and I would cook. Simple pasta, the kind my nonna used to make. He would sit in the kitchen, his tie loosened, and we would talk. Not about his work or my school, but about books, about the city, about stupid movies. I found myself laughing more than I had in years. The fear was still there, a low background hum, but it was no longer the only note. Sometimes he would come to me late, after a long night of business I had promised not to ask about. He would be wearing one of his perfect dark suits, and on the cuff of his white shirt there would sometimes be a faint, dark smear, a smudge. It could have been motor oil. It could have been rust from the pier. It could have been blood. He never explained it. I never asked. But he had a ritual. He would go into my small bathroom, and I would hear the water run for a long time. He would wash his hands, meticulously, scrubbing his skin, his nails, his cuffs. He would wash away his world. Only then, with his hands clean and a little red from the hot water, would he come out. Only then would he reach for me. Only then would he touch my face. It was our metaphor. It was the boundary. He would not bring his world into mine. He would wash it off at the door, and I would pretend not to see the stains. 1 year passed. The grinding fatigue of Ristorante Aurelio was a memory. The smell of stale wine and lemon sauce was replaced by the clean, sharp scent of antiseptic and latex. I graduated. My diploma was not just a piece of paper. It was a shield. I was not Lena the waitress anymore. I was Lena Caruso, community health nurse. I got the job I was born for. I ran a mobile health clinic, a big, converted van that traveled the neighborhoods the hospitals forgot, the near West Side, the immigrant corridors, my people. We offered vaccinations, prenatal checkups, pediatric care. It was the work I had started my internship doing, the work Rosa had pushed me toward. The clinic was astonishingly well funded. We never ran out of supplies. Our equipment was new. One day, I was looking at the small brass plaque by the door, the list of major donors who had paid for the van. The Romano Pediatric Fund was there, but at the very top, the largest donor, was a name that made my heart stop. In memoria di Nonna Lucia, my grandmother, not his, mine. I stood there for a full minute, my hand over my mouth. He had not just given me the resources, he had given me the honor. He had made my family's name, the name of a poor Sicilian immigrant, the cornerstone of the project. It was the quietest, most profound gesture he could have possibly made. He asked me to marry him on a Tuesday. There was no grand party, no hidden ring in a champagne glass. He came to my apartment after a long day. He looked tired. He did not kneel. He just stood in my small kitchen, having just washed his hands, the cuffs of his shirt still damp. He held out a box. Inside was a ring. It was not a diamond the size of a headlight. It was a simple, thin, platinum band, elegant and strong. "I cannot promise you a normal life, Lena," he said, his voice raw. "I cannot promise you peace, but I can promise you this. I will protect your boundaries. I will stand guard at the line you draw, and I will never, ever try to cross it unless you invite me." I looked at him, this man of shadows and complicated rules. He was not offering me a crown. He was offering me a shield. I said yes. Detective Reyes stopped by the clinic a week later. He looked less tired than he used to. He was drinking the bad coffee I offered him. "I am closing a file," he said, pulling a familiar white envelope from his jacket. "I thought you might want this." I opened it. It was the photograph. Me and Lorenzo, his hand on mine at the gala. "Where did this come from?" I asked. "It was not Lorenzo's man," Reyes said. "It was one of ours. Coast Guard intelligence. He was deep undercover in Lorenzo's operation, tracking the Bratva connection at Pier 14. That is how we had the tactical team so close that night. Your intel just confirmed everything he had been gathering." He took the photo back and tore it in half. "The case is closed. Lorenzo is gone. The pier is clean." He finished his coffee. "But do not get complacent, Lena. Do not ever let yourself fall asleep in this city. This was a win. It is not the war." Rosa came to the clinic. She did not ask for a tour. She had already read every report I had filed. She observed me for an hour, watching me with a young mother, translating medical instructions into the neighborhood Italian I knew. when the mother left. Rosa nodded, a look of quiet, absolute approval on her face. "You have done well," she said. "You have honored the money." She reached into her purse. "My son gave you a ring. I am giving you a tool." She placed something heavy and cold in my palm. It was another key. This one was older, heavier, iron. "What is this?" "It is the key to a door," she said. "A door Mateo does not know about. A door that leads away from this life. If the day ever comes when the cage I warned you about finally closes, if the day comes that you need to open a door that he will not or cannot open for you, you use this." It was an escape plan, the ultimate sign of respect. She was not just protecting her son, she was protecting me. I looked at the heavy iron key in my hand, then at my mother's silver key still around my neck. "Why are you doing this, Rosa? Why trust me?" Rosa looked out the window of the van, at the kids playing on the sidewalk. "You remind me of another nurse," she said, her voice suddenly soft, distant. "A long time ago, my husband, Mateo's father, he was very sick. Before the end, he was a difficult man, full of pride and pain. None of the private nurses would stay, but one did, an Italian-American girl from this very neighborhood. She was kind, but she was strong. She did not take his nonsense. She made him laugh. She held his hand when he died." I froze. "What was her name?" "Lucia," Rosa said. "Her name was Lucia. Your mother." I stared at her. My mother had been a nurse. I knew that, but I never knew where she worked, or for whom. "She never told me," I whispered. "She was a professional," Rosa said. "She kept her patients' confidence. She was the best of us." I looked at Rosa, truly seeing her for the first time. The connection between our families was not a broken plate. It was not an accident. It was a debt. It was a legacy of care, spanning 2 generations, a quiet, strong line of women holding the darkness at bay. That night, I stood in front of my mirror. I was wearing my scrubs, ready for an early start. I held the 2 keys in my hand, my mother's silver key, the key of promise, the one that had held a microphone, and Rosa's iron key, the key of escape, the key of autonomy. One opened the past, one secured the future. I put them both on the chain around my neck. The next morning, I walked to the mobile clinic. The engine was running. Mateo was there, leaning against his black sedan across the street. He was in his world. He did not cross the street. He did not come into my territory. He just watched me. Ensuring I was safe, I unlocked the van, my territory. I turned and looked at him. He nodded once, a silent acknowledgement of the line between us. I nodded back. I got into the driver's seat and turned the key. The agreement held. We would live together, 2 worlds touching, respecting the border. I knew love did not save the world. It did not wash away the sins of the past, and it did not stop the darkness from coming. But it gave you a reason. It gave you the right reason to stand on that line, to face the shadow, and to refuse to back down. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where in the world you are listening from, so please leave a comment below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like, and please support us by hitting that hype button, so this story can be heard by even more people.